Shahnaz?
Yeah, Minal.
Hi. No, apparently the recording has already started. So
yeah, I'm stopping it. I'm stopping it and I'll
Okay,
start
good.
it again. Just
Yeah,
give me
please.
2 minutes, please.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Minal, you can start.
You know, I started, but I was on mute. Do you have to start?
So I think you start again, please, because we couldn't hear you.
Okay. All right. So, hello. Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you. I am Meenal Shirsagar, chairperson of the Literary Club of the Asiatic Society of Mumbai. I am very happy to welcome you here this evening. Today, we are hosting a conversation between Shakuntala Bharwani, author of the book My Sindh, and her editor and publisher, Saz Agarwal. We are delighted that ours is the first forum where this book will be discussed. It was published only in April of this year. So this is a book, just to give you a little idea about it, that weaves together vivid memories with historical snippets, remarkable people, and family stories. Shakuntala was a baby when her family fled Sindh in 1947, and she's never been back. Yet, her deep connection with her ancestral homeland has resulted in a series of explorations of the mind and heart. Through her wit and insights, we will enjoy absorbing essential aspects of a lost culture, and especially because her interlocutor is her friend and editor, Saz Agarwal, who is recognized for her work in the field of Sindh studies. Thank you very much, both of us, for joining us on this platform today. But before I hand over the floor to you, let me introduce you to the audience so they know exactly what you're all about, okay? So, Dr. Shakuntala Bharwani has been with the Maharashtra Education Service since 1973. She taught English language and literature, first at Elphinstone College and later at the Government Law College. She has also been a guide and mentor to students working for their MPhil and PhD degrees. She says she has never retired and is still in government service working part-time. Wow, that's quite something, Shakun. She has written and edited many textbooks which have been selected and prescribed for students of the university. Her textbook, titled Law and Literature, has been a prescribed text for law students of Bombay University since 2004. Her novel, published in 1996, Lost Directions, was recommended reading for the Department of Cultural Studies at London University. Her monograph, Nissim Ezekiel the Poet, 2004, was commissioned by the Sahitya Academy in New Delhi. Her academic career, to give you just a little, very brief description, took a quick start when she topped the MA examination in English at Calcutta University with the first class first. And in 1985, she went on to study at the Exeter College in Oxford, where she did a 6-week course in the 20th century novel. In 1990, she was awarded a British Council visitorship to Downing College at Cambridge, where she spent a week meeting writers and poets. In 2001, she was selected by the United States Educational Foundation in India as a Fulbright teacher to the USA for 4 months. There, she was attached to City University in New York, but she also attended and led seminars at various public universities in the state. Her book, My Sin, Travel with Me to the Beloved Homeland, her latest book, was published in April 2021 and was written during the COVID corona period. It has already received several reviews, and critics have praised it because it combines information with a subjective tone, and it is intensely readable for its subtle touches of humor. So there we have Shakuntala. Thank you. To tell you a little about Saz Agarwal, she's an independent researcher, writer, and artist who lives in Pune. A body of writing includes biographies and translations, critical reviews, and humor columns. Her books are in university libraries around the world, and much of her research contribution in the field of Sindh studies is easily accessible online. Her 2012 Sindh Stories from a Vanished Homeland is an acknowledged classic. With an MSc from Mumbai University in 1982, Saz taught undergraduate mathematics at Ruparel College, Mumbai for 3 years. During a career break, she had a baby and she established a byline as a humor writer. She was appointed features editor in the Times of India in 1989, where she launched Ascent, the highly successful HR pullout of the Times of India group. From 1998 to 2006, she was HR and quality head of CCOM, an international technology company based in Pune. As an artist, she is recognized for her Bombay cliches, quirky depictions of urban India in a traditional Indian folk style, as well as a unique range of offerings at the annual Art Monday event in Pune. Her art incorporates a range of media and, like her columns, showcases the incongruities of daily life in India. So here we have Saz Agarwal. I now hand over the proceedings to both of you. Saz, would you like to start?
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Meenal, for your very generous introduction. And hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you all here. I'm a little overwhelmed because I can see people here from all around the world, including, I just noticed Zulfikar is here from Sindh, and he's the one who actually took this photo of, which you can see on the cover of Dr. Bharwani's book. Now, Shakun, can you please unmute yourself? Because I want to go straight into the first chapter of your book, which has some lovely stories about animals and people, interesting places. And I want you to tell us, why have you started with crocodiles?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Thank you for inviting us for this program at the Asiatic Society. Thank you especially, Meenal. I know that you've taken a lot of trouble and a lot of work. Thank you, Saz, and thank you all for being here. It's so wonderful to see so many. Yes, I loved this idea of the crocodiles, and I didn't think of the crocodiles much until my brother kept on reminding me about the crocodiles and the visit to the Calcutta Zoo. So this is a picture of Mangho Pir, which is about 15 kilometers away from Karachi. The Saint Mangho is supposed to have arrived here when he was being badly treated by the Mongols, and the crocodiles appeared to save him. And the large crocodile is called Mor Raja. This crocodile is supposed to be there since the last so many years, and the other crocodiles are supposed to be his progeny. Also, what is wonderful about Mango Pir is that there are hot springs there, and these hot springs have curative powers. So, both Muslims and Hindus come here to pray and to bathe and be healed. So this was something that really enchanted me, crocodiles being worshipped, and my brother remembering those crocodiles. So I decided to write about this.
So Shakun, it's not just crocodiles, you've also got camels there. And, you know, can you tell us something about why you've done camels in this book?
Yes, the camels came to my mind again because my brother would love to go to the zoo every time I visited Kolkata. And he would say, you know, Nana would take me on the camel back, and we would go around seeing his fields, and his people would bow down to him. And he would tell me that the camels of Sindh are so much better looking than the Arab camels. And Sindh being part desert, it is easier for camels to move fast, whereas horses slip. So this was most interesting, and I wonder how he remembered all those stories. So I thought I would start with that.
And you talked about your grandfather, your Nana, and you know, not the camels on his land. Can you tell us something more about your grandparents?
Yeah, my Nana was landowner, a zamindar in the village of Bhiria. That's my grandfather's picture there. They were staying in Bhiria in Nawab Shah, and my brothers remember that at his home in Bhiria he also had a cellar, and they loved running up and down and looking at all those bottles in the cellar. And I said to myself, even in those days, in a small place like Bhiria, my grandfather had this underground cellar, which my brothers remember. Of course, they are older than me, so I don't remember. So I've always felt that I've missed out on all this.
But what about your grandparents? What happened? Because when partition took place, they would have had to leave their lands and their home and that cellar as well.
Yeah, they had to leave. There was no way out, and they came to Delhi. And in Delhi, first they stayed in camps. Then they stayed in the camps for a short time because, fortunately, in compensation, they were able to get a small plot. But this was nothing compared to what my Nana had in Nawab Shah, and it was quite miserable for him to adjust to this situation. And he didn't live very long after that. He passed away very soon. They came to Delhi in 47, and in another 2.5 years, he passed away. So I never had the chance of seeing him. I was too small. Yeah. So many people had this kind of difficulty to adjust to these surroundings suddenly, where they had so much in Sindh.
And we're now in, you know, coming close to Independence Day. So that's actually one of the reasons why we decided to have, you know, this event with Shakun's book just a few days before Independence Day. Shakun, I want you to tell me, what was it like in Sindh on India's first Independence Day?
Yes, we will be celebrating Independence Day here in a few days. But in 1947, when Independence Day came, Sindhis were not celebrating because during the partition, Bengal was partitioned, but the Bengalis got West Bengal. Punjab was partitioned, but the Punjabis got a part, but the Sindhis got nothing. And this was a real tragedy. They were left with nothing, and uh, Sir Cyril Radcliffe, who was heading the Boundary Commission, and he drew this line which separated people, separated villages, separated homes. In fact, later confided to a veteran journalist that had I more time, I would have done a better job. He came to India in July, and within 6 weeks, he was supposed to draw up this boundary line. So it was done quite thoughtlessly, and it was very unfair to people like the Sindhis.
Why would you say that Sindh was not partitioned?
Well, I suppose one of the reasons, and an important reason, is that nearly 70% of Sindh was Muslim, 30% were Hindus. So this was the major deciding factor. And of course, Sindhis and Muslims, the majority and the minority community, had lived together peacefully for centuries, ever since 711 AD, when Muhammad bin Qasim invaded Sindh. So all these years, Sindh had been part of the Muslim world. So there was a majority of Muslims there.
But then what went wrong?
Actually, when partition occurred, there was not too much trouble in Sindh. In other places, there was much more trouble because the Muslims and the Hindus had got on so well. They'd lived as companions for so many years. In fact, when the Hindus were leaving, the Muslims were telling them, "Don't leave. Why are you leaving?" And they even protected them, gave them place in their own homes. But it was when the others from UP and Bihar and the Muhajirs started coming in that they began to eye the homes of the rich Hindu merchants and take control of their properties and their fields, and threatening them, showing them the sword. And then the Sindhis realized that there was no way out and they would have to leave. And this is when they made arrangements as soon as they could. This is a wonderful picture of them leaving, because to travel by they left in whatever way they could, whether it was on horseback or walking, because trains were very unsafe, aeroplanes were expensive, so the safest way was by steamer. Most of them tried to come by steamers.
Is that how your family came as well?
Yeah, because we were in Quetta, and from Quetta, my uncle, that is my father's older brother, who later became Justice J.L. Nain, he had joined the Navy as a short commissioned officer, naval officer. He made arrangements to hire a naval bus. We got into that, and from Quetta, we drove to Karachi, and from there we were able to get a steamer, and we came to Gujarat. So that is where we arrived.
So, Shakun, we are talking about a people who had participated wholeheartedly in the struggle for independence, and they were, as a people, so happy when that day came closer. But then eventually they lost their own homeland. Now, the thing is, because of the circumstances, people don't really associate Sindhis with the freedom fight. So can you give some examples of the participation?
Oh yes, the Sindhis participated wholeheartedly in the freedom struggle. They did so much. There were people like Hemu Kalani, a young man. You can see his picture here. He was the one who came to know that arms and ammunition was being arranged to be carried to Quetta by the British to quell the crowds there who were who were preparing to fight for independence. And with his accomplices, he planned to derail the train. But the British came to know about it, and he was taken into custody. He was beaten, he was forced to reveal the names of his accomplices. But this young man of 19 or 20 refused to divulge the names, and he was hanged. So this was one person. Then there were so many others in my own family. Seth Sukhdev Bharwani, my father-in-law's oldest brother, he also arranged the Swadeshi movement because they had cotton ginning factories in Karachi, and they sent around people to collect the foreign clothes and light a bonfire. If you've read that story of Indira Gandhi where she burns her dolls. So this was exactly what he organized. Here is Seth Sukhdev standing with his cap near Nehru. So they were freedom fighters, and then there was also my husband's grand uncle, Seth Harchand Rai. He played an active part. There was K.R. Malkani. There were innumerable Sindhis who did so much in the way of money and all kinds of support. So even Seth Harchand Rai, who was president of the Karachi Municipal Corporation, he did so much. Then this is Bhai Pratap, who gave money to support the fight for freedom. He was a rich Sindhwarki who also helped people when they arrived after partition, homeless over here.
Here, this is Gandhi visiting Sindh.
Yes, and Seth Harchand Rai is there also in this picture,
sitting next to Gandhi.
Yes, sitting next to Gandhi.
So will you tell us something about him?
Yeah, Seth Harchand Rai. Sorry?
He is a relative, right? He's from your family.
Yes, he's my husband's grand uncle. He was president of the Karachi Municipal Corporation for 33 long years, and he's often referred to as the father of Karachi. And he did so much for the Karachi Municipal Corporation that the British Commissioner, Mr. Hudson, planned a statue for him to be placed at the entrance of that grand Karachi Municipal Corporation. So this statue was placed. And also another thing is that Seth Harchand Rai was elected to the Legislative Council in Delhi. And when the Simon Commission came to Delhi, he was called by Lala Lajpat Rai and so many others to show his protest. And he wanted to protest against this voting by the electorate being separate for Muslims and Hindus. And he didn't like that because he always thought of a secular nation. So he wanted to mark his protest for that. He didn't want separate electorates for the two communities. He knew this would cause trouble. But on his way to Delhi, he was taken ill and he passed away just a day before the Simon Commission arrived in Delhi. So I'm just naming a few people. There were so many others who gave their life and their money and their blood to Sindh, but today they are not remembered at all. So this is what, and then another thing is this headless statue of Seth Harchand Rai. In fact, I saw this picture in the Dawn newspaper, and the article was written by Akhtar Baluch from Pakistan, and I felt so sad at seeing this headless statue, and I decided what happened. And I came to know that the statue had been desecrated, the head lopped off, and the statue was lying in a godown in the Karachi Municipal Corporation. And the family has been writing letters to say that the statue should be repaired and placed in a proper position, in a proper place. But of course, nobody has paid heed to that in Karachi. Yeah. So we lost everything. We lost our heroes. We lost everything when we had to leave Sindh.
You also talked about your visit to Kutch and what happened to you there, being close to Sindh and the museum. So will you tell us about both these things?
It was lucky that we were able to visit Sindh along with some friends who are present here today, I think in the audience.
And Shakun, you just said we were lucky to be able to visit Sindh. Now,
No,
as
I'm
far as
so
I
sorry.
know this was wishful thinking. I know.
Yeah.
It was
What? Yeah, because I felt I was in Sindh because, you know, from that Kalo Dungar hill in Kutch, you could see Karachi. And the guide told us that there is Karachi, you can see the lights. So I've always thought that I've seen Sindh. So yeah, that hill Kalo Dungar on which you stand, that hillock, you can see the lights of Karachi. So that made me feel very close to Sindh. And also during this trip, we visited the Shamji uh, Shamji Museum, which had the whole history of the freedom movement and the people of Gujarat who had participated in the freedom struggle. It was so well maintained and beautiful, and I thought to myself, if we had Sindh today, this is what we too would have done. Whereas our children don't know about Sindh, and I have learned something only because I have started studying about Sindh recently. So this was a very emotional moment for me when I visited this museum. I hope one day we'll be able to have a museum like that in some place.
You've mentioned about the warm relationship between the Hindus and Muslims of Sindh. So can you tell us something about how that happened?
Yeah, you know, Sindh, strangely enough, as I said, since 711 AD, when Muhammad bin Qasim invaded Sindh, conquered Sindh, um, it became a part of the Muslim world. And the relationship between the Hindus and the Muslims continued, and it was quite cordial. The Hindus were never treated as second-class citizens. They were the merchants, they were wealthy, and the wonderful thing was that there were many who came through the northwestern passes into Sindh. They came from Afghanistan, they came from Multan. But I think, among the most important people who came were the Sufis. Suf means wool. And these Sufis, wearing their simple woolen shawls, had a strangely strong influence on the Sindhis and on the Hindus and the Muslims. And the Hindus and the Muslims, many of them were Sufis. They prayed together. The Hindus visited the dargahs of the Sufi saints, and the Sufis and the Muslims visited the dargahs too. And together they prayed. And what I also think about very often is that even now many Sindhis visit the dargah at Ajmer. They are followers of Sufism. And also recently I went to visit a friend, and in the other room I heard a chanting of Allahu, 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 and I said, oh, there's no masjid nearby. And I asked my friend, who's chanting? And she said, oh, my mother-in-law. That was the chant given to her by a Muslim peer, by a Sufi Pir. So she chants. And at home too, in my own house, when my husband was under pressure, Indru would chant Rasya Dastagir, Rasya Dastagir. So we have still continued that tradition of Sufism because Sindh was exposed to so much. So Sufism is a way of life for many of us still, even now.
Right, that was lovely. Thank you, Shakun, for sharing that. Now, you mentioned also about the Hindus being well off in Sindh. And we know, so I just want you to tell us a little like here. Let me start with this screen share again. So, a little bit of the historical reasons why the Hindus, after they came and settled in different places, of course, it was partly their spirit and their, their strength to move on and improve their lives. But partly there were historical reasons, the networks that they had, the traditions, the education. And I wanted to ask you to tell us, this picture is a picture of the Amils during British times. So who were the Amils?
Yes. Saz, I have read your book on the Amils of Sindh and I've come to learn a lot from your book. Yes, the Amils were the educated class. The word Amil is from Amal, administrators. They were the ones who were educated. They knew Persian. Later they studied English when the British conquered Sindh. And they helped the Mirs to administer. The Mirs were the rulers, the princes, and they relied on our Amils to help them to make their documents, to help them with other work. So they were a very important part of the government. So this is a beautiful picture of the Amils.
But
Yes.
then, of course, the majority of the Hindus were in trade. So,
Yes.
you
The
know,
Bhaibans were trading, and they had traded from time immemorial since the 1800s, and they had traveled to every part of the world. It is surprising actually that around the 1800s you had firms like SARS, the one you've got a picture here of Pohumal Brothers.
in Gibraltar.
Yes, and then there were the Vasyamal Asumals, there were the Chen Rais, there were so many of these big names, the Dhalamals. They had traveled literally to every part of the globe. This was the first Sindh diaspora. The adventurous Sindhis set out for ports, and at first they were trading in Sindh work. And when they found that this was popular, they began to visit more often and take along articles which they found were very saleable. So they began to get more and more things which people would buy. And at the ports, so many people came. So near the ports, they set up their shops, which grew and grew and grew. And they became big offices and big establishments. So that today also you find Sindhis in every part of the world. This was our first diaspora in the 1800s.
And you also talked about Shikarpur.
Oh yes, I love Shikarpur. I wish I had been to Shikarpur because I used to hear about Shikarpur so much. Yeah, the Shikarpuris were the masters of the Hundi system. And coming from a business family, I had heard the word Hundi in my house. And later on, I married into a business family, and I heard hundi again, and I wondered, is it a cooking utensil? And I couldn't understand, occupied as I was with my own academic work. And then I experienced this firsthand. One day, a Gujarati friend of Indru's, my husband's, came to the house and he said, I need this money badly, Indru. You have to arrange it for me. I have to buy a house, otherwise somebody else will go ahead with this. So my husband told him, don't worry. He immediately rang up his Shikarpuri friend, and within 2 hours, the money was on the table. So uh, the hundi is a bill, it is a promissory note which is given by one party, and you can draw money anywhere else. In fact, what is also very interesting is that our British colonial rulers also used, they didn't stop this system or interfere with the system because they themselves found it useful. And when you read some of these books written by the colonial writers, you find that when they traveled, they didn't also carry too much money with them because of thefts and dacoits. So they also took these promissory notes from the Shikarpuri merchants. And in fact, Richard Burton, who visited so many places, writes, like Shikarpur was like the banking system of the world. You could take money and go anywhere, and your bill of exchange would be honored. So Shikarpuris were really, and the Shikarpur Merchants Association in Bombay still functions in a big way, I discovered. So it was wonderful. Another thing about the Shikarpuris, if I may take a moment of silence, can I do that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, the Shikarpuris also made so much money that, I can say it because there aren't too many youngsters here. They also had second establishments where they had their mistresses and lived a good life. So, but they were very generous, and even in their own Shikarpur, they were very philanthropic. So it was a very adventurous community.
So I want to move from Shikarpur to nearby Sakhar. And this is the photo that I was telling everyone about, which was taken by Zulfikar. Zulfikar Ali Kalhoro, who is an anthropologist and who's done a lot to preserve to document the monuments of Sindh. So Shakun, will you tell us something about this place?
Yes. Is Zulfikar present with us today?
I saw him coming in, so...
Thank you so much, Zulfikar. Yeah, and Saz, you've chosen this picture so well, and Veda's also done such a great job. Thank you so much. At the back is the Lansdowne Bridge, which was supposed to be one of the wonders of the world. It spanned the Indus. On one side was Rohiri, on the other side was Sakhar. These two twin towns, it connected them. And I remember my sister-in-law, Raju Nain, telling me that, we used to cross over from Rohiri to Sakhar and go to the cinema houses in Sakhar, because there were cinema houses in Sakhar. So that's the Lansdowne Bridge. It was the cantilever bridge without any pillars, and I said it was considered the eighth wonder of the world. And there is the Satyanjo Asthan also there. The story goes that when Muhammad bin Qasim invaded Sindh, there were some maidens who, afraid of being molested, escaped to this mound and sought protection. And this structure was put up in memory of these 7 maidens. Satyanjo Sthan it is called, and people go and pray here. And what is great is that the wishes of women are granted. So women go, and when women go, the men tell them, pray for us. And the women tell them, why should we pray for you? The wishes of women are granted, which is wonderful. We women should all go there and pray for our wishes to come true.
So when you say sati, are you talking about women who were burnt on their husband's funeral pyre?
No, actually, that is one meaning. But here, sati means, like Sati Savitri. So, sati here means uh, a maiden, a girl. That is why they escaped, afraid of being molested. So, a sati is an innocent girl. That is why it's called Satyanjo Isthan.
So I think Sindhis also have a lot of value for their nyanis.
Oh, yes.
Nyani, what is, can you tell us the concept of nyani?
Nannies are actually treated with great respect during prayer ceremonies, whether you are praying for the death, for the departed, or for any festival. The nanny is first fed. She's given fruits, she's given gifts, and even after marriage, when she visits her parents, she is treated with great respect. And because of her, the husband also gets some respect. He's called Nyana. So, by virtue of being the Nyani's husband, he gets the title of Nyana. So, yes, women are respected in Sindhi societies, which is really wonderful.
Thanks. Now we've also seen how the Sindhis lost their home, they lost their possessions. You've told us about how they lost their heroes. I want you to tell us about something else which they lost, which is also intangible.
Yes, this was something that really was bad. We lost our language, and I've been studying the Sindhi language, and I can see how rich the Sindhi language is. There are sounds which are, because of the influence of so many other uh, cultures in Sindh. Sindh has an alphabet of where there are sounds which are not there in other languages. It has 52 letters, and in fact, what I found very interesting is that in 1853, when the British came to Sindh, when they conquered Sindh and made it a part of the British Empire, they introduced Sindhi as the official language because uh, the Muslims were familiar with Arabic and they found Sindhi easy, and the Sindhis knew Sindhi. So it was introduced as an official language, and moreover, Sindhi is such a rich language that we have our poets Shah Abdul Latif, Sarmas, and so many of them. In fact, in Calcutta, my father was desperate to find a translation of Shah Abdul Latif's work. He would always tell us, you're studying Shakespeare, you're studying Dickens, you're studying everything else, but why don't we get a translation of Shah Abdul Latif and you read that, because you will find that he is greater than Shakespeare. That was my father's opinion, and he knew his Shah Abdul Latif and his Shakespeare. And there are so many proverbs in Sindhi. The vocabulary is so rich. Uh, for example, we have simple, commonplace proverbs which mean so much, and they are so, a few words mean so much. For example, in my own house, I heard regularly proverbs like Ji khush ta jahan khush. If you're happy, everybody is happy. Then Bertha Barha, if there are two people, they can accomplish anything. Then there are so many other proverbs. And also another thing is Our vocabulary is so vast. I was reading this book by Bhupati Hiranandani called The Literature and the Language of Sindh, and she has at least 10 or 12 words for cow. You know, like one is a cow which is barren, a cow which has a small calf, a cow which is giving milk, a cow which cannot give milk. There are words for every stage in the life of our mother cow. So it shows you how rich the language is and how much we have lost because our children don't know Sindhi, we don't know Sindhi. So we've lost a lot in the way of language. Of course, we've lost so much else too, but Sindhi is something that we cannot make up now because there are no Sindhi schools, and that's tragic.
Okay, let's move on from this tragic loss to things that were not lost. Let's look at the things that were not lost. For example, the tradition of philanthropy. And, tell me what you want to about that.
Oh yes, this is the Tarachand Hospital, the Udhav Das Tarachand Hospital in Shikarpur, and it is still there. And it is a hospital, in those days also, it was a hospital where everything was given free, medicines, care, food. It had excellent doctors, and it was started, I mean, the idea came from Rai Bahadur Tarachand, and it started off with his mother being very ill and he couldn't find the right doctors, so he contributed 1,00,000 rupees, which was a big sum in those days, and then he also collected money from other philanthropists, from Bhaibans and Sindhwarkis, and he set up this hospital, and it's there today also. It had its statue in the front, but now the statue has been preserved in Hyderabad.
Yeah, this is a case, you showed us your Harchandra's
Yes,
statue was beheaded, but I believe this statue was taken away and preserved for safekeeping when statues were being destroyed, and it's kept in a museum.
Yeah, that's a great thing. It's kept in Hyderabad, I think.
I think so, Jamshoro maybe.
Yes, Jamshoro, Hyderabad. It's preserved over there, you're right. Yes.
And then coming to somebody your family saw building something, do tell us about that.
Yes, I can't forget what the Hyderabad Sindh colleges have accomplished, but yeah, it's interesting to know this story because I remember it so well. When my family came from Sindh, the whole family stayed in Nutan Nagar, opposite the Bandra railway station. They were all cramped in a little place. And my uncle, Justice Jail, and of course he wasn't a judge then, he and his wife went around looking for a place where they could build a house. And after roaming around, they found a plot in Bandra. And Bandra in those days was really the back of beyond. And cows and pigs used to roam around. And my grandmother, of course, used to say, "Who wants to go to Bandra?" But it's like a jungle. But they couldn't afford anything more, so they bought this plot and they started the construction work. And soon they found another person who was also roaming around like them and trying to find a place. And then they found this man negotiating a plot just opposite their plot. And then they became friends, and he told them that he had sold his wife's jewels and he had been supported by some other Sindhwarkis and Barrister Advani and Amils, and with that he had managed to collect money and he was also building a place there. So my aunt and he would share their lunch packets sometimes. They would chat, and she would see this man lifting bricks, cementing, bringing in sacks of material for construction, and doing so much work himself. Who do you think this man was?
Shakun, I just want to say something because I can see Kishu Mansukhani is here with us today. And, when I interviewed him, he told me about his uncle, the person you're talking about. So Kishu was a child at that time, soon after partition. And Professor Kundanani, who later became Principal Kundanani, he was determined. He had left Hyderabad and he didn't want to leave his college. So he carried his college with him and he was determined to build it again. And every Sunday he would sit with a stack of postcards, which he would write to his former colleagues, and they were all over. There was somebody, because they were people who had lost their homes, so they were struggling, and he would write and tell them, just wait, you do what you have to do now, whether you're giving tuitions or you're helping in your cousin's shop or whether you're frying tikkis to earn a living, but I will call you back soon. And he did. And Shakun, you want to carry on and tell us about him? I'm just going to pull up a picture of his. Give me a minute because I want to tell you about this picture also. You can see this college is started by a band of so-called refugees, Sindhi refugees, and he's standing in front of a banner where it says Kannada Association. So he's speaking at an event which is nothing to do with Sindhis. It was National College, the first. Would you like to carry on with the story of the first student?
Yeah, you tell it, Sas, because I know you've also written about
this. This from Kishu, and it's been written about before. The first applicant to the college was a Muslim, Shakir Gaya. And the board was a little wary that, we lost our homeland because of them. And Principal Kundanani, he said, this is National College. It's got nothing to do with what your religion is. And he joined and he became his favorite student. And later he also taught in National College.
Wonderful, yes, I know.
So I want to also show you this board of the DG National College in Hyderabad. This photo was sent to me via Aslam Khwaja, who lives in Karachi. And it shows the principals of National College Hyderabad. And the last one, I think you will recognize his name, Shakun. Do you want to tell us about him?
Yeah, the last one is Hiralal Bharwani, my husband's uncle. He was the last principal before partition. This is his picture. He had traveled around the world. He had studied at Cambridge, professor of English and French, and he had done brilliantly. He sent postcards to Sindh from across the world. And after partition, he came to he came to Delhi, and this was something that made him very unhappy. He, in spite of being such a brilliant man, and some people still remember what a great teacher he was, and his lectures were attended by every single student. They looked forward to his lectures. But in Delhi, he died of a broken heart, and he couldn't take this new situation. And when the family asked him to come to Bombay, he was not happy about that. So this was a very, very sad episode for the family. So there were people like this in Sindh, highly educated. He was a member of the Bhaiban Club, Sindh Club, a Theosophist, a Freemason. There were people like that in Sindh. He was not the only one, but after partition, everything had to begin all over again. So there were some people who could understand this, but there were some who couldn't, and he was one of them.
Thanks, Shakun, for telling us about this very interesting person. And now, this is a question that I had for a long time. Why are we going on talking about Quetta so much when Quetta is not even in Sindh?
Yeah. Quetta is in Baluchistan. Yeah. And it's called the fruit basket because there were fruits in plenty and delicious fruits which my parents always used to remember. And this is the Bolan Pass which connected Quetta to Afghanistan, Baluchistan, Iran. So my father, being a trader, found it very convenient to travel from Quetta through the Bolan Pass to these parts, Afghanistan, Baluchistan, and it was in these areas that he learnt Pashto. And this was the language which inspired me to trace my roots. Where had he learnt Pashto? So this Bolan Pass was a very convenient and short route to places outside. And when the train started, it became just a 4 or 5 hour journey. So my father used to love this journey. He used to often tell us, you know, I went through the Bolan Pass so often, and I carried this. He carried tea also. He carried fruits from Quetta and brought back stuff from these other places which he visited. So the Bolan Pass was very memorable. Whenever I read about Sindh, I remember the Bolan Pass. And the fact is that when I write, since my passport has on it place of birth Quetta, Baluchistan, I am constantly hauled up by the American consulate whenever I go for any visa of any other work, and they say, "Oh, you were born in Baluchistan. Have you got any links? Have you visited? Do you know anyone?" So it's very strange, but yes, the people in the US are very, very apprehensive about anyone's connections with Baluchistan, and I definitely have a connection, having been born there.
So
Yes.
here's some documents. Can you tell us
Yeah.
something about this?
Yeah, this is my certificate of registration, and we Sindhis, many of us have these because when we came, we were without any papers, and this, according to the Indian Constitution, uh, Section 5, anyone who had been in from anyone who had come from Pakistan and had stayed for 6 months in the new India, he could apply for a certificate of citizenship. So my parents were naturally emotionally very disturbed because we had no identity, we had no papers, and my father worried that where would we get admission into schools or any other place. So this application was made, and we got this certificate, and I mean, he used to treasure it, and today also, after I got married, even he sent it to me and he said, keep it, you're going to do your PhD, you might need it to show that you are a bona fide citizen of India. So for refugees who came, this was a document that gave them emotional support, a feeling that they had some place to stay. And this was the reaction of my father too. And I noticed that my husband also had a similar certificate among his school papers. So in school he had to submit a certificate to state that he was a refugee from Sindh.
So, Shakun, we've talked about so many things that were lost and things that were retained. And one of the very interesting and important things that was was, of course, Sindhi food, Sindhi recipes. And I thought that of all the lovely parts of your book, and I should say before I step out that I thoroughly enjoyed working with you on the book. I loved your stories. Some of them made me laugh. Some of them taught me things. And the one I'm going to ask you to read now, if you don't mind, is about Sindhi mutton. You're muted, so please unmute yourself before you start.
Can you hear me?
Now, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, this is very strange, Saz. I'm so glad you let me include this in the book because I was in two minds. And the surprising thing is that when my book was published by you and people began to read it, I thought I'd get erudite questions, like academic questions on the history of Sindh, on partition. But instead, in my email, I was getting questions on Sindhi mutton. And people asking me to explain what Sindhi mutton was. I found this very funny. So, yeah, of course, we are all interested in food. And after this, we'll be rushing out for dinner, I'm sure. But there's another little story, if you don't mind, I'll relate it briefly. My husband used to know a person called Dr. Sayar, who was chairman of the Bhabha Atomic Energy at Trombay, Bhabha Atomic Energy Institute, this absolutely top institute for nuclear research. So Dr. Sayar was director, and one day he came to my husband and he said, this place had the top canteen also. So Dr. Sayar came to Indru and said, Indru, what does this mean? I've received a letter and it states that the canteen food is excellent, but it's not mutton that your canteen is serving. It is horse flesh. Sack the manager of the canteen and get a new manager who knows about Sindhi mutton. So obviously after that there was a discussion, a round table conference almost on Sindhi mutton, and in which I participated also. And so this was it. I wrote a short bit about this, and it starts off with, do you want to really hear it? Is there time? Shall I read it?
Meenal, do we have time for a short reading?
Yeah, we have.
Yes, I think we do.
You want to hear about
After
Sindhi
that,
mutton?
open up the discussion. Yeah, please go ahead, Chakun.
Okay. I hope vegetarians won't be offended. Yeah, I'll read that.
So long as you don't make us eat it, that's fine.
Yes, exactly.
No, I won't make you eat it. Yeah, here it is. I should find the page. Here it is. Yeah. So it starts off with my niece coming to Bombay and my brother, who's a great businessman and a great traveler. He writes to me from Canada that my daughter is coming. So as soon as my niece arrived and we pick her up, Tina happily announced, Auntie, Dad said I must learn something about Sindhi culture from you. He says you know everything. So as soon as we reached home, I rang up my cousin Kamal and I told him, what instructions have you sent me through your darling daughter? I must teach her something about Sindhi culture. First, you are shirking your own responsibility, and secondly, courses in Sindhi culture are taught over a period of 2 years, not 2 weeks. Oh, you are the professor, sis, and you know everything. I was born in Calcutta, schooled in Panchkani, flew off to Ohio. moved to Dubai, then went to Hong Kong, etc., went to Singapore, and then I married a Bengali wife. I scolded him. He's 2 years younger than me. You should know about Sindhi culture. Your blood is Sindhi, and you were born to Sindhi parents. And then he tells me, I'm sure in all the various places I have stayed in, my blood has got diluted. I will be soon heading to Texas. As my Sindhi partner says, the property market there is booming, so I must go and study that. So I said, okay. What do you want me to teach her? Oh, teach her anything, he said. Don't you remember how you taught me to buy Sindhi mutton? Teach her that. Oh, I said, you mean Sindhi mutton is a part of our culture? Of course, it is part of our heritage. I was in New York, in the Indian area at Jackson Heights, when a man came to the butchery and asked for Sindhi mutton. I thought the butcher wouldn't understand anything, but the fellow smiled and replied, yes, of course, sir. We have tender mutton chops cut the way Sindhis like. He was obviously familiar with the special Sindhi cut and quality. Oh, I said, if that's all you want her to learn, then just take her to Jackson Heights. Why are you asking me to teach her that? But he continued, I remember that day when uncle, your dad, was not feeling well and he wanted to eat forte jotivar. That is mutton cooked in elaichi, in cardamom. He felt it should be good for his sore throat and his fever. So we went to the new market and told the butcher, "Adha kilo mutton do," and he instantly packed up a parcel of mutton and handed to you. You grabbed it and gave it back to him and announced authoritatively, "बकरी का नहीं, बकरे का. ये जल्दी वापस ले लो and बूढ़े बकरे का नहीं, छोटे बकरे का दो और chops काट के दो." You were 14 and scrawny and skinny. I was 12. The butcher laughed shamelessly and he took the parcel back, got the cut you were pointing to. He cut it exactly the way you wanted and he handed it to you. When we came home, your dad said that was the finest mutton he had ever eaten. So I actually haven't put down the whole recipe, but I've written about how to select good mutton, because I've noticed when I visit the Kolaba market also, Sindhis are always buying mutton and they really know how to choose. So even visiting the Kolaba market, I've learned a lot. So that's the story of Sindhi mutton and how many people are interested in Sindhi mutton.
That's amazing. Jackson Heights has Sindhi mutton. So, Meenal, we have,
Yes.
I can see 2 hands are up. Vihana, maybe they have questions. Vihana.
I think, there may be many people who would like to talk, who would like to speak. So we could ask everyone to unmute themselves. But before that,
Kusum has her hand up. Kusum and Vihana have been waiting. They've got their hands.
All right. Because then after that, since we are the Lit Club, I would like to mention titles of some books that deal with this subject. But by all means,
I think, Kusum, did you have something to say? If you do, then you need to unmute yourself.
We'll just make sure that everybody is unmuted at the end. And
everyone can unmute themselves.
Okay,
Whenever
fine.
they want, they can unmute themselves now.
Right, Meenal, I think you should carry on because there's no response from Kusum.
Okay, and I'm also going to invite Shirin Vakil to speak because she's written a review of Shakun's book. They're good friends, and she's written a very sort of in-depth review. So I would like her to say a few words. But before that, since we are the Lit Club, I thought I'd do a little bit of research with the help of friends, on this subject. And the one book that, of course, is outstanding, and I'm sure everyone knows about it, but I must mention it. It was published in 2018, written Sindhnama, written by Geeta Simmers and Nandita Bhavnani. So this is a landmark publication for the Sindhi community, illustrated book that talks about the rich cultural heritage and history of Sindh and the Sindhi people. So that is one. And then there are various titles which I would like to mention very quickly, if that's okay. I'm sure many of you have heard of Tamas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It was written in 1973, a novel and a screenplay for television by Bisham Sani, and set in 1949. Shakun, Saz, you must know of it.
It's written by a Sindhi, but I think the story is set in Punjab.
Yes.
Yes, the writer was born in Rawalpindi, and he's a college lecturer and so on. So that is something that is well known. And then another landmark publication is 1998, The Other Side of Silence, written by Urvashi Butalia, where she reveals dark truths about our history. For about a whole decade, she collected oral narratives and testimonies from women, children, and Dalits, which is to say that she gave voice to marginalized people who had never been heard before. So that was really truly an outstanding piece of work. Then in 2017, Gulzar's Story 2, or Do Log, which was originally written in Urdu and translated into English by the author himself, where he examines the status of refugees after partition. And really, this is one of the most poignant tales written recently, because Gulzar revisits the horrors of partition in this story. 2018, The Night Diary by Veera Hirnandani. This is in the genre of young adults, set in 1947. Their diary entries from the perspective of a 12-year-old girl who becomes a refugee after having led a life of luxury in Sindh. 2019, Across the Line by Nainika Mehtani, where she talks about the division of India and Pakistan and how one small action but of great and grave consequences can change millions of lives. That too is for young adults. And the latest book, which has just been published by B.P. Rawal this year in 2021, Open Past, Open Future. My Journey Across the Borders of the Mind and Nations. And he talks about how, I have yet to read it, how family fortunes vanished in the aftermath of the partition and created the extraordinary legacy that it has. So thank you for allowing me to talk about that. And now, could we please hear Shirin Vakil?
Can you hear me?
पण आज मी आज नाही 8:30 ला बघणार नंतर, कारण मला आता अजून एक तास बसायचे 7:30 ते 8:30 पर्यंत. मैं रिकॉर्ड करेगी मेरा चालू करना है उसको, हो जाएगा फिर बाद में.
So there seem to be a lot of people who have questions. Can we start with Neeta?
No, can we have Shirin read her review first?
Oh, sorry. So I'm so sorry, Meenal. Excuse me.
No, we're waiting for that. And those who have nothing to say could perhaps keep themselves on mute, because There seems to be some cross conversation here.
Yeah, can you hear me, Meenal?
Yeah, Shirin, yes, please carry on.
Okay, thanks, Meenal, and hello to everyone. Shakun, thank you for a truly absorbing book. I've enjoyed every bit of it. And what I really appreciate is how you've intertwined the personal with the political. What you've chosen to focus on is the richness of Sindhi culture and history. There is something that struck me is that there's no bitterness and no anger running through your work.
Thank you, Shireen. We visited Kutch together, you remember?
Yes, indeed. Yes, Shakun. And what I, really would like to say is also how much I learned about the syncretistic quality of Sindhi culture, how much it takes from other religions. I'm certainly not going to read the whole review, but if I may, I'll just read the last paragraph, which says that My Sindh is a book to be read and enjoyed not only by the Sindhi community, but by everyone who's interested in the diverse communities and cultural complexities of this vast land of India, where connections are subtly interwoven to form a rich tapestry of colors. It's a especially rewarding read for those of us whose parents and grandparents were born in undivided India and who grew up listening to stories of shared histories, of friendships formed, of ideas exchanged across borders, those shadow lines that in the ultimate analysis merge into the oneness of human interaction. Thank you, Shakun.
Thank you, Shireen.
Thank you, Shirin.
Yes.
Now maybe we can, there are some raised hands, so would they like to unmute themselves?
Aram is the only living person who had direct contact.
Sorry?
I think we start with Neeta because she's had her hand up for the longest.
Yes, of course. Neeta, would you also like to switch your video on? Neeta, where are you?
Suresh Bhavnani. Suresh, you're on mute. If you'd like to ask your question, please unmute yourself. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Suresh Bhavnani. I'm talking from Texas in the US.
Wow.
I've really enjoyed this meeting. It's very well put together and hugely attended. Shakuntala, thank you so much for the wonderful work you've done. I'm a professor myself, and I don't know how many people in this group have visited Sindh, but I did visit Hyderabad, Sindh, mainly because I'm grandson of Mukhi Govindram, who grew up in the Mukhi House. And the Mukhi House was recently donated to the Sindh government to be made into a museum. And the Sindh government invited me and my relatives to inaugurate the museum. So I had an excellent time, and I've done research on 300 years of the Mukhi family. We have a video. I've been doing a lot of interactions of community work with the Sindh community over the last year to make them aware of the museum and hold functions. My question to you, Shakuntala, is in your research, did you come across the Mukhi family, Mukhi Govindram, who was the minister in the state cabinet of Sindh?
I know the Mukhi family in Bombay.
Yes.
But I don't know the entire family. I know a few members who are in Bombay. So I could go into the background and ask them and find out and sort of introduce you to them or provide information or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, I know them. They're my my uncles, etc.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, but I was wondering if you had done research on the Mukhi family.
No, I'm sorry, I haven't.
Suresh, would you put the link to your video in the chat in case anyone here would like to view it?
Absolutely. My
Lovely.
second question, if I may, Saz, may I have
Of course.
another question? My second question is that we have started a group called the Mukhi Awaz group, which is a community WhatsApp group. And through the Mukhi Awaz group, we've been organizing community events in the museum, inviting people from the local community. And so we have, after, my mother grew up in the Mukhi house, and I visited the Mukhi house in Hyderabad, Sindh. We had a wonderful time there when we visited. And I was wondering, Saz, if there was an opportunity through you, because you have such a following, whether I can reach out to the Sindhi community in India, because right now my connections are mainly in Hyderabad, Sindh. And how would you advise me to be in touch with the Sindh community?
Suresh, let's talk about this offline. I'm just going to give you my mail ID in the chat right now and
Fantastic.
look forward to hearing from you. Yeah,
Excellent.
lovely. Thank you very much.
And
We have
and maybe Shakun, can we ask Shakun Kimatrai to talk now?
Yeah, Shakun is waiting. Lovely. Thanks, Meenal.
Shakun?
Yes. Oh, I see. I cannot
There's
start the
another
video.
Shakun.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, congratulations on this wonderful work, Saz, Meenal, and of course Shakuntala. I will be brief. I also visited Pakistan, Hyderabad, Sindh, and I wrote an article called My Trip to Sindh, The Journey to My Roots, which is up on my website. But just to tell you quickly, I have written various books on Sindh, which are Hindu customs and beliefs, which is actually more Sindhi cultures and rituals, Sindhi culture and rituals. But of course, because it was kind of released by the Bharati Vidya Bhavan, I had to make it a little Indian. But more importantly, it's the two books that my husband translated. One is the history of Hindus in Sindh, and the other one is Sindhi surnames, the origin of Sindhi surnames, which is really extremely, because he came across a book which was from the beginning to the 1940s, and I did some research from the 40s to now, which is, anyway, a lot of books which are down for free download. One of them is on Sindhi Pahakas, Sindhi proverbs also, and it's called The Wisdom of Sindh, and it is all for free download on shakunkimatrai.com website, shakunkimatrai.com. So I won't take more of your time. If anyone is interested, you could just go through them, go through the books, and go through some videos, some interviews I have taken in them. Of course, Shakuntala interview also I took, but that's it. I won't take more.
Thank you so much, Shakun. I'm a great fan of your work and really owe you a lot. That the translations are absolutely fabulous. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Shakun.
Shall we invite Vispi to talk now? Vispi Balaporia?
I'll just unmute myself.
Yes, you have. Yes.
Yes, Shakun, great listening to you. I understood you were born in Quetta. Is that right?
Yes.
But you don't have a birth certificate, do you?
I don't have a birth certificate like people have now, but in school a certificate was given to us when I joined school in Calcutta, based on the registration in Calcutta. So there's no certificate which was given like we get it here in Bombay from the hospital. So I don't have a certificate, and moreover in Quetta I was born in the house and we had a doctor next door who delivered. So I don't have a certificate of birth.
So you began your journey in an interesting fashion.
Yes. My mother didn't know she was going to deliver, and I appeared suddenly, and she called the doctor next door.
Such a nuisance, Shakun, from birth.
Yeah, quite.
Thank you, Shakun.
Thank you, Vispy. Thank you.
I noticed that we've got Anju Makhija with us today. Anju, would you like to say a few words?
And also Menka Shivdasani, I sent them invitations. So Menka.
Anju is this very well-known writer.
Yeah.
And if she'd like to, yes, of course, there are other hands that are up as well. Neeta, are you there? And Kusum? There's Mangala, Jai Bhatia. Wispy, your hand is still up.
Jay, unmute yourself, please.
Hi, Auntie. How are you? Auntie, first of all, congratulations on your book. I have the copy here. I've just started reading it, haven't finished it yet.
Thank you.
But,
Thank you.
I'm going to do that.
Thank you.
I guess I can always get in touch with you at any time. I will do that after this. I had one question, Auntie.
Yes, Jay.
I come from a generation, I would say I'm relatively a youngster in the Sindhi community. And I feel that we have lost so much touch with what it means to be a Sindhi. Like I think 6 months ago found out about Cha Abdul Latif Bhittai, and I wanted to see what Bhittai is all about. And I literally could not get anything about Bhittai, anything that I could read or I could understand. And this made me feel, in a sense, suffocated that, there is no way for me, standing where I am, to be able to understand what it means to be a Sindhi.
Yeah.
So what I would like to ask you, and even Saz, is what advice do you have for us youngsters who are so far away from the language, from our culture? What can we do to come closer to this? Other than, of course, reaching out to you, to Saz, to talk about this, what else could we do to figure out what being a Sindhi is?
I just saw Zulfikar has put a link to his book on the chat. So take a look. Maybe that will help you to start. There's so many, and when you have this kind of feeling of being helpless and overwhelmed, I think one small step at a time, and with the kind of enthusiasm and energy you have, I'm sure you will get there very soon, Jay.
Jay, you stay in Holland, don't you?
I do, yes.
And I suppose in Holland it's not very accessible to you. But thank you so much for attending.
I have it right here, Auntie. The world is one.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
What I would ask and everyone to do is, if you could, if you could put your email IDs in the chat so that we can have it and we can reach out to you, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Saz would be the right person, yes.
Thank you.
Anju, would you like to unmute yourself and say something?
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Anju.
Hi, Anju.
I already told Shakun this is a wonderful book full of humor. And of course,
Thank you, Anju.
Writer, she has put her soul and heart and above all her style into it, which is what I like about it. So congrats,
Thank you.
And of course, Saz for putting it together. No, my question that I put earlier, what about the younger generation? I was happy to see there were some youngsters here, but what does everybody feel about getting youngsters involved? It's an old question. It's been going around for a long time, but I think it's time that we got some solid suggestions in such an audience. So please, if you all have any suggestions, I'm sure we could be listening.
I think we should have more meetings like this, because today there are youngsters present and people like Jay Bhatia from Holland joining us is a great achievement, because he's a very busy techie and with startups to his name and involved in his work. If we can get people like that to attend, then definitely knowledge of Sindhi literature work will definitely come to be known and understood.
Shall we now allow Mangala to say something? Mangala, are you there?
Yes,
Mangala,
I'm there.
to unmute yourself.
Yes, I've just unmuted myself. You know, Shakun, first of all, your book, it brought back so many nostalgic memories for me because I started my career in Kishanchand Chelaram College. And two people you spoke about played an important part in my life. One, Popati Hiranandani, who became a dear friend. And she was so passionately fond of her language. And you know, she said, "Oh, you do French. Shall I tell you something? Unless you know your, please go to," at that time I knew very little Marathi. "Please go to your own language. You'll never regret it." And the second person is Principal Kunnani, where after 2 years in KC, he said, "Can we start a department of French?" I was thrilled, and we worked very hard to start 2 papers in French. And at that time came the possibility of working in Elphinstone College. How was I going to tell him that? So I went to him with lots of trepidation, apprehension, and I said, "Principal Kunnani, I'm getting this chance, but even my mother says actually you should be satisfied with what you have and remain in KC." He said, "What nonsense. You have to go to Elphinstone. Don't stay here. We'll get someone." And he said, "If we were like that, I would never reach where I have reached." Not only that, I'm very grateful that he was so generous. He did not take 3 months pay from me, because if you left, you had to give 3 months pay.
Yes.
And so I remember these two people. And then one more thing, a question. I saw among all my Sindhi colleagues such admirable solidarity. They were always standing by each other. And I wonder today, Shakun, if you can tell me, is this because of what they had been through? All the travails and tribulations and pain and trauma, was it what brought them together? Of course, I don't like to generalize about communities, but this is something that I saw in KC College and was very touched by it.
But Mangala, don't you think that this happens among most communities?
No.
No.
I
The
don't think
Gujaratis.
it does not happen amongst most
No?
communities. No.
No.
Oh. Because I see the Gujaratis, who I know, also are very supportive of each other and sort of unite together. Yeah, but I suppose it is, as you say, more so among Sindhis, because
it could be also, Shakun, don't you think that those particular people, they had worked together earlier and they had gone through this traumatic experience and then they came out of it holding hands, so they stayed together. Maybe that's what it was, Mangla. What do you think?
Yeah, I really have wondered, because it was something that I found very moving, something that I hadn't seen around me.
So sweet. Thank you for bringing
yeah,
that up.
yeah. It's quite true, Mangal.
And I loved I'm dying to read your book, Shakun.
Thank you.
And you spoke about it so, so naturally and spontaneously. That was also wonderful. Nothing pedantic. It was so wonderful.
So much.
It was like being across the table with you, having a cup of tea.
Thank you.
You'll feel the same when you read the book.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
Saz has been my mentor. She's pushed me all the time, even when I was writing, when I was preparing. She has been so much support. I have to give her all the credit for my work.
We allow 2 others to speak now.
She asked
There's
wonderful
Deepali and Asha, who are very
And Gina, Deepali and Asha.
Yeah.
So Gina, please, will you unmute yourself?
No, I don't think she's raised her hand.
Yeah,
Yes,
Gina
I
has
have.
her hand up.
Yeah, I
Is
wanted
that
to
so, Misty?
answer Mangala's question. I think it's because we lost our land. We don't have a homeland that we can go back to. So all this getting together is because of that. I think that's what that was my answer to her question.
Yes. And of course, maybe there are no communities like we have among Maharashtrians, Brahmins and non-Brahmins, and people tend to think of themselves that way.
We do have Brahman, we have the Maharajas in the Sindhi community.
But it's not such a conscious feeling.
It is, because when we have our Ambars and all, it's the Brahman.
Shakun spoke about the Amils and Haibans.
But they transcend those differences. They transcend that to come to close to each other and help each other, which I don't see around me.
I disagree.
Anyway, I think that's for another day, perhaps.
Yeah, that's for another day.
Would Asha like to say something? And also Dipali?
I'm sorry, I can't unmute my video for some reason, but can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead, Asha.
I have two questions for Shakun that is permitted. I would like to know, first of all, can you tell me, during your research, did the Sindhi suffer under the British rule, to the best of your knowledge?
Is that a question for me or for Shakun?
Anybody can.
Shakun, would you like to take that?
Sorry, I didn't hear the, I think I was muted. Could you answer it, Saz? Because I think I've muted myself.
Are you asking whether the Hindus suffered under British rule?
Yeah, mainly.
Very simple answer, without going into the depth of it, is that I think the Hindus took advantage of the education with, the new system of education brought in by the British. They took advantage of the employment opportunities, and they created new trade opportunities for themselves using the British Empire. So, they made the best of it, is what I would say.
So you're including Sindhis in this?
I'm talking about the Hindu Sindhis.
Hindu Sindhis, I see.
That's, when we say Sindhis, actually that is something I've noticed. The Hindus were a minority, but since we are talking about the Hindus, when we say Sindhis, usually we mean the Hindu Sindhis. In India, most of the Sindhis are the Hindus who migrated in 1947.
May I say a comment?
Sure.
Talk फार सुंदर झाला. चालू आहे अजून. अरे शकून भारवानीचा आज तिच्या सिंधी पुस्तकावर.
I just wanted to
mute yourself, Mangala.
अरे झालं माझं 1-1.5 तास मी तेच ऐकते. मी पण बोलले.
Mangala, please mute yourself.
Sorry.
Okay, yes. So can we allow Shalini to speak? And then there was Dipali, but I don't know where she's gone now.
I think Suresh still has a question.
Yes, thank you so much. In my research, the Hindu Sindhis benefited enormously when the British came. In fact, before the British conquered Sindh, the Hindu Sindhis were not allowed to own any land. And it was only after the British came was that rule lifted. And my family, the Mukhi family, benefited enormously from that lifting because they were very good business people. And I have stories from my mother that are in the video that I just posted. We have a YouTube video describing how the Mukhi family interacted with the British. And one of the and the British governor actually visited my family for dinner in the Mukhi house, in addition to Jawaharlal Nehru, who stayed for 2 nights in the Mukhi house in Hyderabad, Sindh. So the British treated the Hindu Sindhis extremely well and with very deep respect. That's based on firsthand descriptions from my family directly to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That's very helpful. Suresh, any relation to Jyoti and Thakan Babnani in Manila?
No, I'm more in touch with the Mukhi family. My mother is a daughter of Govindram Mukhi, who was in the Mukhi house that I mentioned earlier. But I just posted a video that goes through the history going back 300 years. And we did all that research. And that should give you an indication of the deep respect between the governor of Sindh and the Hindu Sindhis. There was mutual respect, and they interacted on a regular basis. I have pictures of my family with the the British governors. In fact, the British governor could speak Sindhi. And my mother met him and was very surprised that he was speaking Sindhi. And he said, we are expected to learn Sindhi to be able to govern Sindh. Is that interesting?
Yeah, just one comment if I might just take 2 minutes. After it was made the language of Sindh in 1853, when the British conquered Sindh, there was a rule that all officials should know how to speak Sindhi. So after 1853, anyone in government service, in the government service of the British, had to know Sindhi. And since the Sindhi script was not, there were so many scripts, it was regularized at that time into the 52-letter script. So that is why many of the British learned Sindhi, and they even wrote books, dictionaries, translations of Sindhi books.
Yes, I think his name is Sir Lancelot.
I think we should allow a couple of other questions now, because time is
Shalini
short.
and Dipali. So Shalini, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thanks so much. I know we're running out of time, but just a very quick one. First of all, I want to say thank you. It was absolutely amazing session, and I'd love to come to many more of these. So thank you very much. And also thanks to the youngsters, because it's so nice to see them carrying on the Sindhi culture. You know, we at home spoke very little Sindhi. So I don't know how much of Sindhi our children are going to carry on. My question here, a short one. You know, my parents, they weren't married then, and they came as refugees like most others. But they did want to go back just to see their home and see the place. Unfortunately, both my parents passed away, but I really do want to go back to see it. I know it's very different. I mean, I probably won't recognize it from the stories that we've heard, but I do want to go back. Is there any way to get to Karachi and, of course, Lahore and Hyderabad, Sindh, where my father...
What passport do you have?
Indian. And
very difficult to get a visa, so I think we should just wait for a while.
Sorry?
It's very difficult for an Indian to get a visa to Pakistan.
Okay.
Yeah, so at the moment, you just have to wait, and hopefully things will improve.
Okay, so how, how do we expect that will open up? I mean, do I keep in touch with the consulate and just apply for a visa? Or is there a group, some visit your homeland kind of group?
They do have pilgrimage groups which go, but I think, you know, in any case, travel is not happening right now. So anyway, we have to wait. And hopefully, you know, once travel starts, hopefully things will improve, though it doesn't seem very likely, but no harm in hoping. But yeah, you will have to wait.
Sorry, where can I get access to this group, this pilgrimage group?
Unfortunately, Shalini, I don't know myself. If there's anyone here who can answer that, that would be lovely.
Yes, I think some of the Gurdwaras organize this group. In fact, I was told about a Gurdwara group going to Amritsar and Pakistan to visit the birthplace of Guru Nanak.
Yeah, that's Kartarpur, but no, I wanted to go to Karachi, which is where
but I don't know whether at the moment there is any way.
Yeah, maybe you could get in touch with SARS later.
Okay.
Shalini, I have my mail ID in the chat, so please mail me and let me see what we can figure out.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
And if if there's no one else, I can see that Nina Roshan Shivdasani is there, and I'd really welcome her saying a few words. Nina.
Yes, Meenal. I feel I have to listen more because
you
they
can
have
say
so much
too.
Well, I feel I grew
Nina,
up.
let me just introduce you. Nina is a filmmaker and an artist, and many achievements to her name. So I'd really be delighted if she said a few words.
Thank you, Meenal. must say that I grew up not knowing what it meant to belong to a culture so rich, because I was able to transcend at a very early age communities, but I still know that I am a part of all this, because when you all talk, I feel an affinity to everything that is said. So I really want to thank you. Saz, you are really good at, I mean, you were really good also. So it's centered me a bit into understanding my origin, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you so much. Dipali, are you still there, Dipali?
No, she seems to have disappeared. I think there are no more people who've not had a chance, except for Kusum. But I think she too has disappeared, as has Neeta. So shall we just wind up now? Because we've been here for a long time. It's been absolutely fascinating. Anyone else who wants to say just a few words? Someone not had a chance. Yes, Rispi?
There's a question whether recording will be available about the session.
Yes, I hope so. It is being recorded, and yes, we will be downloading it by and by.
They can keep in touch to find out, right? I just saw the question.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, it is being recorded, and it just has to be downloaded by someone. And then, of course, the recording will be made available. So, shall we call it?
I have one more point, very quick point. If anyone goes to Sindh, you must visit Mohenjo-daro. It is a spectacular experience. And when I went to Hyderabad, Sindh, I went to Shikarpur as well as to Mohenjo-daro. You will need security. I have a contact of the culture minister, who I'm in direct contact with for the inauguration of the Mukhi House. So contact me if you all want to go to Sindh, because I had an amazing experience, but you do need security when you go there. That is just a quick point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'll just quickly, very briefly, just say, a formal vote of thanks. Because really it's been an extremely stimulating and fascinating evening. And, what's really special is that both of you have your heart in this story. And that's what made it especially enriching. So thank you very much indeed, Shakuntala and Saz. You put together a wonderful program. And we have really enjoyed getting a glimpse into the world of the Sindhis, which is so little known to us. And, we've enjoyed being on a journey with you through your homeland. And I'll just quote Shakuntala here in a note to the reader, that I'd like to salute you, I quote, members of a scattered, adventurous, and brave community. So there we are. And thank you, audience, for your participation. I could see that there were many questions, comments, and everyone was so engrossed in all this that I'm really happy. And we had over 200 people attending this program, which is not often this happens with us. So it's been highly successful. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank our technical team, Dr. Shehnaz Nalwala, chairperson, who was, vice president who started the program, and Dr. Usha Vijay Lakshmi, honorary secretary, who I think is still there with us. And, we really like to thank them for their unstinting support, because without that, we would not be able to do these programs at all. Usha, I can see you there. Hi, thank you. Thank you, Usha. So shall we wind up now? Shall we?
Yeah, we can. Thank you, Sal. Thank you all for attending.
Nina, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much. Dipali,
thank you.
Can you keep the chat on so we can read it in case there's information about emails and things like that?
Usha?
Yeah.
Suresh, will you put your mail ID there, and then we'll mail you the chat.
Oh,
Because
fantastic.
It'll be downloaded as a notepad file once the meeting is over. So we can just mail you that. Just put your mail ID in there.
I'm dying to talk with you. I have so much material.
Yeah.
Minal, you were saying something?
Chat
No, about the chat box, because there's a lot of information there which people would like to share with,
See, we need to take a screenshot. We can't really save
So
that.
you know what? It comes when the meeting is over. It gets saved. The chat gets saved as a notepad file.
Yeah, I just see that.
Along with the videos, it comes in a folder along with the video and the audio.
One second.
Yeah, and if you send it to me, Usha, I will pass it on to Saz and to Shakun.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
And once we have the recording, of course, we'll share it with everyone.
And I also wanted to say Shalini will find, somebody has posted how, the groups of people that go to Sindh in the chat.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry I missed it. Can you please repost it? Thank you.
It's in the chat. You can scroll the chat and you'll find it.
Okay, but it won't go off now, no? Once the meeting is over.
Just scroll quickly because, or you can post your mail ID there and we'll send it.
Sure, I'll do that. Thanks.
Okay, so shall we close the webinar, Usha?
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you for everything.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Saz.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Shakun.
Bye, Suresh.
Bye.
Much with you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.